You've probably been there, right? At work, staring at some really tedious task, maybe a gap in your data, or just a clunky process that only affects your team.
Yeah, and you think there has to be a better way.
Exactly. And maybe you're not a coder, you're not technically IT, but you're pretty tech savvy.
Sure.
So you start clicking around, maybe you explore one of those platforms you've heard about,
Mm.
something visual, drag and drop,
Uh-huh.
and, before you know it, you've actually built something, a little app, automated a workflow, maybe a dashboard that solves your specific problem.
And it works. It makes life easier.
It really does.
And that scenario you just described, it's happening everywhere in companies all over the world. And the scale, the speed, it's really changing how tech gets built inside organizations.
So that's what this deep dive is all about, this huge rise of, well, tech-empowered business users, they're often called citizen developers, using these low-code and no-code tools.
Exactly. And it's a pretty big shift.
Yeah, it's definitely not minor. And it brings up this really fascinating, sometimes, let's be honest, contentious question for everyone, from business leaders to IT departments.
Which is,
Is this explosion of self-service tech building a good thing? Is it this powerful engine for innovation, giving companies the agility they desperately need?
or Bennett,
No.
is it the flip side? A growing risk, a source of, uncontrolled technology popping up everywhere outside of IT's view, the thing we call shadow IT.
Friend or foe? That's the core tension, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's this constant balancing act between speed and control, innovation versus security, letting business units run versus needing central governance.
Hmm.
Understanding the tension is, I think, crucial for navigating work today.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're taking a deep dive into the source material we have here, this article, Shadow IT and Citizen Developers, Friend or Foe.
Yeah.
We want to unpack all these different forces.
Looking at it from both sides, the business needing speed and IT needing, well, security and stability.
Right. So by the end of this, you, our listener, should have a much clearer picture, not just the definitions, but, the real drivers, the actual impacts, good and bad, and what this all means for how tech gets built and managed going forward.
It's about understanding the forces shaping your own workplace, really.
Okay, let's dive in. The source starts very logically by making sure we're all on the same page with the language, defining the key players and the core problem.
Absolutely. You can't really talk about this stuff meaningfully without getting the terms right first. So Chapter 1 really focuses on clarifying citizen developer and shadow IT.
Good. So let's start with citizen developer. The source gives a pretty specific description. Who exactly fits this bill?
Well, the definition is quite clear. A citizen developer is essentially a business user, someone in finance, HR, marketing, operations, you name it.
So not a professional developer.
No, definitely not. Their main job is their business function. But they use technology tools, specifically these low-code or no-code platforms, to build applications or automate processes themselves. The key thing is, they aren't formally trained developers. They've either picked up the skills or been given tools that let them build software solutions to tackle problems in their own area.
And what kind of things are they typically building? Are we talking huge, complex systems?
Generally, no. The source gives examples like building custom dashboards for specific data insights their team needs.
Okay, like visualizing data in a new way.
Exactly. Or automating repetitive workflows, maybe processing forms, routing approvals, that kind of thing. Things that are manual and time-consuming.
Makes sense.
Or maybe creating simple apps for data collection within a team or managing specific tasks. It's usually focused on solving a local problem, improving efficiency right there where the pain is felt.
Right. Things that might not be, big enough or high enough priority for the central IT team to tackle quickly.
Precisely. Or maybe the business unit just has such unique knowledge about the process that they're actually the best people to build the first version of the solution anyway.
So they see a problem, and now they actually have the tools to fix it themselves quickly.
That's the core motivation. They're close to the problem, they feel the pain, and these new tools give them a way to solve it, often much faster than going through traditional IT channels. It's about boosting their own productivity or their teams.
Got it. So that's the citizen developer. Now, the other term, the one that often sounds a bit more negative, shadow IT. How does the source define that, and how does it relate?
Yeah, shadow IT definitely carries that connotation. The source defines it as basically any IT-related stuff, hardware, software, cloud services that's being used inside the company without the central IT department knowing about it, approving it, or having any oversight.
So it's technology operating Well, in the shadows.
Exactly. Outside the official managed IT landscape.
Okay, so here's the crucial question. Does that mean all citizen development is automatically shadow IT?
And this is a really important distinction the source makes. The answer is no, not necessarily.
Okay.
Citizen development can be perfectly legitimate, even encouraged, if it happens within a framework that IT provides or at least is aware of. Think approved tools, basic guidelines.
Right.
But it becomes shadow IT when those tools get built and used with no IT visibility, no security review, no thought about how it connects to other systems, no compliance checks. It's the complete lack of oversight.
So there's a spectrum.
Definitely a spectrum. On one end, you have IT-supported, maybe even IT-enabled citizen development. That's the goal. On the other end, you have totally hidden, ungoverned shadow IT that just happens because users found a tool and solved a problem, maybe even deliberately avoiding IT.
That distinction feels critical. It's not the act of being proactive with tech that's inherently bad. It's the lack of visibility and governance that makes it shadow.
Precisely. And the source digs into why users go down this path, why bypass IT. And the reasons are, understandable from their perspective.
Like what?
Speed is huge. Just needing to solve an urgent operational problem now, addressing niche needs that are just too far down the central IT priority list.
Waiting months isn't an option sometimes.
Right. Or sometimes it's genuine frustration. Maybe they feel IT processes are too bureaucratic, development cycles take too long, or maybe IT just doesn't quite grasp the specific nuances of their business problem.
So it often comes from a genuine desire to just get the job done more efficiently. They see a direct path to solving their problem.
It's frontline problem solving. Driven by necessity, the problem is real. And opportunity, the tools are now accessible. That combination is potent.
And if it's not managed, that's when citizen development tips over into shadow IT.
Exactly. And for you listening, getting these definitions straight is step one. Whether you're building tools, managing teams who do, or you're in IT trying to figure all this out. Understanding the difference between a valued citizen developer and risky shadow IT helps frame the whole conversation.
Yeah, it helps you figure out how to manage this trend rather than just react to it.
Okay, so we know who is building and what the potential issue shadow IT is.
Yeah.
Now, let's get into the how. How are these non-coders actually building software?
Right, which brings us straight to chapter 2 in the source, the tools enabling all this. Low-code and no-code platforms. These are really the engine driving everything.
They absolutely are. The source is clear. These platforms are the key enablers. They've fundamentally lowered the barrier to creating software. Massively.
So just basically, what are they? How do they work?
Well, at their heart, they offer these visual development environments. Think drag and drop. They abstract away all the complex code syntax you'd normally need to write.
So instead of typing lines and lines of code.
Yeah, you're working with graphical interfaces. You drag pre-built blocks, forms, buttons, data grids onto a canvas. You configure their behavior using menus and drop-downs. You can map out logic visually like a flowchart. And you connect to data sources using pre-built connectors.
It sounds almost like building with digital Lego bricks.
That's actually a great analogy. You're snapping together pre-made components rather than crafting every single piece from raw materials.
And the source mentions a difference between low code and no code.
It does. No-code platforms are really aimed at people with zero coding experience. Everything is done through the visual interface. Low-code platforms, while still heavily visual and reducing code dramatically, might allow or sometimes require small amounts of code, maybe some scripting for more complex logic, custom integrations, or fine-tuning the UI.
So low code might bridge the gap a bit more towards traditional development.
Sort of. It can appeal to both citizen developers who need a bit more power and professional developers who want to build things faster by handling the routine stuff visually and coding only the tricky bits.
In the examples the source gives, these aren't some obscure niche tools, are they?
Not at all. We're talking major players. Microsoft Power Apps deeply embedded in the whole Microsoft 365 world that millions use daily. AppSheet, which is part of Google Cloud. Airtable, which kind of blends spreadsheets, databases, and app building.
So these tools might already be available in many organizations through existing licenses.
Exactly. That accessibility is key. Business users might already have access and not even realize the full potential.
And another crucial point the source makes. The vendors themselves are targeting business users directly now, not just IT departments.
Yeah, that's a huge factor driving adoption. The vendors see this massive potential market of non-developers with real business problems to solve.
So their marketing is all about ease of use, speed.
Right. Build your own solutions fast. Take control of your digital needs. It's a very deliberate strategy to empower the business user directly, putting creation tools in the hands of the many.
Okay, so we have the vendor push. What other big drivers does the source point to for why these platforms are exploding specifically among business users?
Well, several key things come together. First, as we touched on, is just the relentless need for speed to innovate. Business moves fast, market shifts, opportunities pop up, internal processes need fixing yesterday.
Waiting months for IT just doesn't cut it for many things.
Exactly. LCNC lets teams prototype and deploy solutions in days or weeks, not months or years. Second, there's the reality of skill shortages in traditional IT.
Right, finding enough good developers is tough.
It is. And finding developers who also deeply understand the nuances of, say, supply chain logistics or clinical trial management can be even harder and more expensive. LCNC lets companies tap into the digital skills and domain expertise that already exist within their business teams.
Makes sense. Leveraging the talent you have.
Right. And third, there's the need for agile business needs. Things change constantly. A big, rigid application developed traditionally might be outdated soon after launch. LCNC tools often make it much easier to quickly tweak, update, and adapt solutions as business requirements evolve. It supports a more agile way of working at the team level.
Okay, so you combine these accessible visual tools, vendors pushing them hard to business users, the desperate need for speed, IT maybe being bottlenecked, and this demand for constant adaptation.
And bam, you have the perfect storm for technology creation to spill outside the traditional IT department walls.
It really changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it? IT used to be the gatekeeper, the main builder.
And now, that capability is getting distributed across the company. It challenges that old model fundamentally.
It implies IT needs to evolve, maybe become more of a curator, an enabler, a governor, not just the builder.
That's exactly where the conversation is heading. And
Yeah.
think about it in your own context. Have you seen these tools popping up? Maybe someone in finance built a useful little app. How easy or hard do you think it would be to pick one up and build something? For many people, it's a real eye-opener. They suddenly realize they can build things.
And that empowerment, that feeling of I can fix this myself, is incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. These tools are definitely strong enablers for the business.
And there's always a but.
But that power comes with potential downsides if it's not managed properly.
Which leads us right into the benefits versus the risks. Chapter 3 of the source really focuses on the upside, right? Accelerating business innovation.
Yes, this section is all about the positive impact. The core idea, again, is empowering the front lines, putting the tools in the hands of the people who actually live the problems day to day.
And why is that so effective for innovation?
It comes down to knowledge and proximity. Those frontline users have incredibly deep domain knowledge. They understand the nuances, the workarounds, the real pain points of their processes way better than an outside IT team ever could, at least initially.
They don't need weeks of someone else gathering requirements. They are the requirements.
Exactly. And they can build, test, tweak, and refine solutions really quickly right there in their own environment. The source talks about real-world examples of business-led solutions, delivering real value.
Does it give specifics on the kinds of benefits companies are seeing?
It highlights a few key areas. Direct performance improvements are a big one. Tasks getting done way faster, manual steps being eliminated, bottlenecks removed, just making teams more efficient.
Saving time and effort.
Yeah. Also, significant cost savings. You avoid the often high costs of custom development projects, hiring consultants, or even using up scarce internal IT developer time on smaller, department-specific needs.
Cheaper solutions, basically.
Often, yes, especially for targeted problems. And it mentions customer satisfaction benefits too, maybe indirectly, because employees have better tools to serve customers faster, or access info more easily, or streamline processes that touch the customer.
So it's not just internal efficiency, it can actually impact the bottom line and customer experience.
Right, and underlying all this is that theme of speed and agility. Teams can react much more quickly to their specific challenges or opportunities without having to get in line for enterprise-level IT resources or wait for the next big software release.
The source then asks this interesting question. Is this a step towards truly democratized IT? What does that phrase really mean here?
Well, democratized IT in this context means spreading the ability to create technology much more broadly across the organization, not just having IT specialists build things.
So moving beyond just being consumers of technology to becoming creators of it.
Exactly. Historically, most employees just use the systems IT provided. Democratization means making the power to build solutions accessible to many more people across different departments and roles. It suggests technology creation isn't some exclusive craft anymore.
Wow. If you think about the potential, tapping into all that distributed knowledge and problem-solving ability across a whole company.
The potential for innovation could be huge, unleashing creativity, improving digital skills everywhere. It could really foster a culture where people feel empowered to solve their own digital challenges.
Think about your own job for a second. Is there some annoying, inefficient task or process? Imagine if you could quickly build a simple tool to fix it. Now multiply that potential across everyone in your company. That's the scale of innovation the source is hinting at.
It's a pretty compelling vision of productivity and tailored solutions.
It really is. But as we know, this powerful engine needs steering. If it's left completely ungoverned, it can cause serious problems. And that brings us to the faux side of the equation. Chapter 4 in the source is called The Shadow Side Risks, Redundancy, and Security. This is where IT leaders start getting really worried.
Yeah, the source is very direct about this. It lays out the darker consequences when citizen development runs wild and turns into shadow IT. And the risks are definitely significant. They can really hurt the organization.
What are the biggest problems highlighted?
Well, the root cause, really, is the lack of oversight. When apps are built and deployed completely outside of IT's view, they bypass all the checks and balances designed to ensure things like security, compliance, data privacy, reliability.
And why is that oversight so critical?
Because without it, these apps can be incredibly vulnerable. Think weak passwords, storing sensitive data insecurely, not validating inputs properly. They can become easy targets for cyber attacks.
So that little app someone built to track customer calls could accidentally leak sensitive info if it doesn't follow the proper security rules. Rules the builder might not even be aware of.
Exactly. Or a workflow tool might mishandle employee data because it lacks the right access controls. And this ties directly into compliance issues.
Like GDPR, TPA, things like that.
Precisely. Many industries have strict regulations. An app built without considering these rules, maybe it doesn't log actions properly or handle data correctly or follow retention policies, could put the whole company at risk of huge fines, legal trouble. And the person who built it might have had no idea.
Wow, okay. That's serious.
Very. Another major issue is inconsistent data standards leading to data silos. If marketing builds a tool to track leads, and sales builds a slightly different one, and support builds another for customer issues, they'll all define customer or status slightly differently.
Right, using different formats, different definition. Exactly. So you end up with these islands of data that don't match up. It becomes impossible to get a single, reliable view of the business for reporting or making decisions. You have multiple versions of the truth, none of them complete.
That completely undermines being data-driven.
Totally. Then there's simple duplicated efforts. If teams can't see what others are building, you inevitably get multiple teams solving the same basic problem in slightly different ways.
Reinventing the wheel all over the place?
Yeah, wasting time, effort, maybe even money on licenses for similar tools. And maybe one of the trickiest long-term risks the source mentions is scaling without governance.
What does that mean exactly?
Imagine a small tool someone built for their team of 5. It works great. Word spreads. Suddenly 50 people are using it because it's critical to a whole department's workflow.
Okay.
But it was never designed for that scale.
Yeah.
It wasn't built with proper error handling, documentation, or security for that many users. What happens when the original creator leaves the company? Who supports it? Who fixes it when it inevitably breaks under the strain?
It becomes this critical piece of infrastructure built on sand.
Exactly. It creates massive technical debt and operational risk, dependent on something totally unmanaged and often undocumented.
Okay. I see why CIOs and CIOs, the chief information officers and chief information security officers, have growing unease, as the source puts it.
Absolutely. Their job is to protect the entire company's technology environment, its security, stability, compliance, data integrity. Shadow IT is like this landscape of hidden mines, unknown risks, unmanaged vulnerabilities, potential failures they're ultimately responsible for, but have no control over.
So you've got this clash. The business user wants to solve their problem now. IT needs to protect the whole system long term.
Their goals are fundamentally misaligned in the context of unchecked shadow IT. Business prioritizes local speed. IT prioritizes global stability and security.
And if you've ever, wasted hours trying to reconcile conflicting reports from different teams using different spreadsheets, or dealt with a critical process run on some ancient access database someone built years ago that keeps crashing, you felt the pain of this lack of governance, maybe just on a smaller scale. The source is saying this is now happening with much more powerful application building tools.
which makes the potential impact, both positive and negative, much larger. So IT is stuck in this really tough spot.
Right. They can't just shut it all down because that kills innovation and probably just pushes it further underground.
But they also can't just let it run wild because the risks are too high. So how do they walk this tightrope? How do they balance control with enablement?
And that's the core challenge explored in Chapter 5. It's dilemma control versus enablement. Finding that balance, retaining essential oversight without becoming the slow bottleneck that caused users to go rogue in the first place.
Yeah, the old model where IT was the sole provider and gatekeeper for everything tech-related, that provided control, sure. Consistency.
But it often doesn't work anymore. The pace is too fast, the tools are too accessible.
Exactly. The reality now is business users can and will build things. Trying to enforce a total lockdown is usually unrealistic and often breeds resentment, making shadow IT even harder to find and manage later.
So the source says forward-thinking companies are rethinking their role. What does that look like? It's not about giving up control entirely, is it?
No, not at all. It's about shifting how they exercise responsibility, moving from being the exclusive builder and gatekeeper to becoming, as the source puts it, enablers of monitored autonomy.
Enablers of monitored autonomy. Okay, break that down.
Well, enablers means IT actively helps business users build solutions safely and effectively. They acknowledge the need and the capability. Autonomy means letting the business units have the freedom to solve their own problems quickly.
But the monitored part is key.
Crucial. It means this autonomy isn't a free-for-all. It happens within a framework where IT has visibility, can provide guidance, and can manage the associated risks.
So how does IT actually enable this monitored autonomy in practice?
It involves several things, like providing approved platforms, IT vets, and selects a set of LC&C tools that meet company standards for security, scalability, data handling, etc.
Yeah.
So users choose from a safe menu, not just grabbing anything.
Okay, setting the playground boundaries.
Exactly. It also means offering training and resources, workshops, best practice guides, templates, maybe even office hours specifically for citizen developers, educating them on security basics, data privacy, how to build things that are maintainable.
Building capability responsibly.
Right. And maybe providing secure connectors or APIs so citizen-built apps can safely talk to core systems without giving them direct, risky access to back-end databases.
So IT says, okay, you can build, use these tools, follow these guidelines, let us know what you're doing, and here's some help to do it right.
That's the idea. And the monitored part means IT needs ways to see what's being built, maybe a simple registration process for new apps, maybe tools that scan the network or cloud environments for usage of these platforms, maybe dashboards provided by the LC&C vendors themselves.
So they can spot potential issues early. Like if an app starts using sensitive data unexpectedly or grows really popular and might need more robust support.
Precisely. It allows IT to intervene proactively, offering guidance or identifying apps that need to be formalized before they become critical, unstable problems.
This sounds like a huge cultural shift for many IT departments. It's moving from saying no to saying yes, but, or yes, and here's how.
It absolutely is. It requires different skills in IT, more collaboration, communication, education, partnership building. IT needs to work with the business, understand their pressures, and help them innovate safely. It's about becoming a trusted advisor, not just a gatekeeper.
So for you listening, think about your IT department. Are they still mostly a gatekeeper, or are they starting to move towards this enabler role? And if you're in IT, how is your role evolving? This shift seems central to successfully managing this trend.
Which leads us nicely to the next logical question. What does this monitored autonomy actually look like on the ground? What are the practical models for achieving, as the source calls it, governance without friction?
Yeah, that's Chapter 6. Governance without friction models for success. Because the goal isn't zero governance. It's governance that helps, not hinders. Governance that manages risk without killing the speed and creativity we want from citizen development.
Exactly. And the source discusses specific frameworks and practices companies are using to strike that balance. One common model is the Center of Excellence, or COE.
A COE for citizen development, what does that involve?
It's typically a dedicated team, often a mix of people from IT, maybe key business areas, maybe even legal or compliance folks. They act as a central hub.
A hub for what?
For everything related to citizen development. They provide training on the approved tools. They develop and share best practices for security, data handling, UI design. They might offer consulting or support for citizen developers who get stuck or building something more complex. They might curate reusable templates or components to speed things up and ensure consistency. They establish clear guidelines on what's okay for citizen developers to build versus what really needs formal IT involvement. And importantly, they provide a pathway for successful citizen apps that need to be scaled up or integrated more deeply, a way to hand them over to IT smoothly if needed.
So the COE becomes the go-to place for resources, guidance, and oversight. It's proactive support.
Exactly. It structures and supports the activity rather than just reacting to problems. Another approach mentioned is using federated IT strategies.
Federated IT, what does that mean?
It means distributing some IT capabilities or expertise out closer to the business units. Central IT still handles the big stuff, core infrastructure, enterprise systems, overall standards, but you might have smaller IT teams or liaisons embedded within specific departments.
So IT is physically or functionally closer to the business.
Right. They can help guide local development efforts directly, ensuring alignment with central policies while being right there to understand the business context and provide faster support. It tries to bridge that gap.
Interesting. So different organizational models. But regardless of the model, the source emphasizes some key practices are essential.
Yes, good governance needs practical mechanisms.
Oh,
Audit trails are fundamental. You need to know who built what, when changes were made, what data it touches, who's using it. That visibility is crucial for monitoring and security.
can't manage what you can't see.
Exactly. Platform vetting, as we discussed, is non-negotiable. IT has to approve the LC&C platforms being used. You can't have dozens of random tools floating around. It's ungovernable. Vetting ensures the tools themselves meet baseline security, compliance, and integration needs.
Setting the safe boundaries again.
Correct. And the source also mentions providing templating systems, offering pre-built starting points for common applications, or libraries of approved components and connectors. That speeds up development for citizen builders and helps enforce standards and consistency. Makes things easier to manage later, too.
So all these things, COEs, federated models, audit trails, platform vetting, templates, they're about providing guardrails, clear paths, and supports.
Precisely. Guardrails, not roadblocks. The aim is smart governance that enables speed while managing risk. It requires IT to be a partner, an educator, a facilitator, leveraging the business's drive, not fighting it.
Does your organization have anything like this? Approved tools, training, a COE? Or is it more of a Wild West situation? The source strongly suggests that putting these kinds of governance structures in place is what separates the companies benefiting strategically from those just accumulating risk.
And getting this governance right has ripple effects. It impacts how you think about the company's entire technology landscape in the long run.
Which brings us neatly to Chapter 7, Enterprise Architecture in a Democratized IT World. How does the job of the enterprise architect, the person designing the big picture blueprint for all the company's tech change, when solutions are bubbling up from all over the place?
It changes significantly. Enterprise architects, EAs, traditionally focused on designing the major systems and ensuring they fit together coherently, usually assuming most tech came through planned IT projects. In a world with widespread citizen development and potential shadow IT, they can't make that assumption anymore.
So their job gets more complicated.
Definitely more complex, and it requires a shift in focus. They need to move from designing everything top-down to designing the framework and standards that allow distributed creation to happen safely and effectively within the larger ecosystem.
Okay, so what specific things do EAs need to focus on now, according to the source?
A big one is API integration strategies. APIs, application programming interfaces, are like controlled doorways between systems. If citizen-built apps need data from, or need to send data to, core systems like the ERP or CRM, they shouldn't connect directly to the database. That's usually way too risky.
Right.
So EAs need to design, and IT needs to build and manage a set of secure, well-documented APIs that citizen developers can use safely. The architecture needs to define how these APIs fit in, providing controlled access without exposing the sensitive core.
So IT builds the secure doors, EAs design where they go in the build plan, and citizen developers can then build rooms that connect through those doors safely.
That's a really good way to visualize it. Another key focus is system interoperability. Even with APIs, EAs need to think about how all the pieces fit together, the big core systems, the sanctioned citizen apps, maybe even discovered shadow IT that needs to be integrated or replaced. How do they share data consistently? How do you avoid creating new data silos with all these apps?
Ensuring everything can still talk to each other meaningfully.
Exactly. And you can't ensure interoperability or manage risk if you don't know what's out there. That's why shadow asset discovery is critical.
Finding the hidden stuff.
Yes. EAs, working with IT ops and security, need processes and tools to actively find applications, databases, cloud services that are running outside of IT's official inventory. It's not just about playing gotcha, it's about understanding the true state of the technology landscape so you can manage it, secure it, and make informed decisions about integration or retirement.
How do they even do that?
It could involve network scanning, analyzing cloud spending, using specialized discovery tools, or even just leveraging the COE and business liaisons to encourage people to register the tools they've built.
It sounds like enterprise architecture becomes less about drawing rigid boxes and lines and more about cultivating a healthy, adaptable ecosystem.
Very much so. It requires much more collaboration with IT, with the COE, with business leaders understanding their needs, guiding their efforts within the architectural vision, rather than just reacting after the fact when something breaks or causes a problem.
If you've ever experienced the pain of trying to get data from system A to system B and finding it's almost impossible,
Yeah.
imagine how much harder that gets when you add hundreds of little unmanaged apps into the mix. It really underscores why EAs need to be involved in shaping how citizen development integrates with everything else.
So if the business embraces this enablement, IT provides the right governance and support, and architecture creates an adaptable framework. What could the ideal future look like? What's the positive vision?
That's where the final chapter, Chapter 8, takes us. The future, collaborative IT ecosystems. It paints a picture not of conflict, but of business and IT working together seamlessly.
The core vision presented is one where business and IT are genuine co-creators. They build technology solutions together.
Not business or IT builds, but business and IT collaborate.
Exactly. In this ideal model, the business brings that deep domain knowledge, the understanding of the immediate need, the agility to prototype quickly. IT brings the expertise on security, scalability, data governance, integration, long-term support. They complement each other.
So what does success look like in practice, according to the source?
It describes an organization with a thriving ecosystem of citizen development supported by strategic IT involvement.
Thriving ecosystem. That sounds dynamic, productive.
It implies citizen development is widespread and adding real value. But the key is supported by strategic IT involvement. IT isn't hands-off. They're actively engaged, providing the right platforms, guardrails, training, architectural guidance, ensuring the innovation is sustainable, secure, and aligned with the bigger picture, not just point solutions.
And the source says this chapter has insights from companies already reaping the benefits. That's important. It suggests this isn't just a pipe dream. It's achievable.
It offers hope and maybe a rough roadmap, but getting there isn't easy. It requires real cultural and organizational change. High levels of trust are essential. IT needs to trust that business users, with the right support, can build responsibly. Business users need to trust that IT's governance isn't just red tape, but necessary for protection and stability. It needs open communication, shared goals, and frankly, both sides letting go of some old turf wars.
It really sounds like building a true partnership.
Based on mutual respect and a shared goal of leveraging technology effectively for the whole company.
Thinking about that vision, business and IT as co-creators, does that resonate with you, listening? Does that feel like a better place to be than either dealing with risky shadow IT or being frustrated by slow traditional processes? If so, what small steps could start moving your organization in that direction? What conversations need to happen?
It's a powerful vision to aim for.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We started with defining citizen developers and shadow IT, looked at the low-code, no-code tools powering this, weighed the huge benefits of speed and innovation against the serious risks around security and data, explored IT's tightrope walk between control and enablement.
Then we looked at practical governance models like COEs, considered the impact on enterprise architecture, and finished with that vision of a collaborative future.
And the big takeaway from the source seems clear. This whole phenomenon, citizen development and the risk of shadow IT, it's not a simple friend or foe.
No, it's definitely a spectrum. And where any given company lands on that spectrum, whether it becomes a huge asset or a dangerous liability, really depends on internal factors.
The source pinpoints things like enterprise readiness, cultural openness, and governance maturity. Is the company ready for this? Is the culture collaborative? Are the governance processes strong enough?
Those seem to be the key determinants. Whether this trend ultimately becomes a strategic accelerator or an operational liability comes down to how organizations respond.
You can't just ignore it. That leads to trouble. Trying to crush it completely probably won't work and stifles innovation.
So the successful path, according to that final powerful thought in the source, is transforming the relationship. The future belongs to those who can turn collaboration into an operating principle, not a compromise.
Not just collaborating occasionally or compromising, but making collaboration the fundamental way business and IT work together on technology.
Collaboration as an operating principle. That really sticks, doesn't it?
Right.
It feels like the heart of the solution presented in this deep dive.
Absolutely. So, if collaboration is the key to unlocking the good stuff from citizen development while managing the risks of shadow IT, here's the final thought to leave you with. What specific, maybe even slightly uncomfortable conversations need to happen right now in your organization, between your team and IT, or between IT and business leaders? What's the very first practical step you could take to start making collaboration the actual operating principle for technology?
That's the challenge and the opportunity moving forward.